to start, you just want to tell us a little bit about yourself, like who you are, where you grew up, where you're at now, what are you studying, things like that.
Yeah, so I was born in Lawrence, Kansas. I moved to Gardner for a couple of years before I moved to Olathe in like kindergarten. And then I spent kindergarten through senior year in Olathe, dancing my whole life, a whole lot of theater. Um, and so that kind of takes me to now I'm at KU. I'm studying dance and business. I'm graduating early, so not this spring, but next spring I'll be graduating. Um, and then after I graduate, I think I'm going to get my master's in business administration. So I'm excited for that. Yeah, that's kind of a little bit of my background, if
Yeah.
that's okay.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's great. So in high school, I think it was your senior year, you were an International Thespian Officer, right?
Right.
Can you tell us a little bit about that experience? I think that's super cool.
Yeah, totally. So I'll tell you a little bit about like what the position is and then a little bit about like what my experience was. So the International Thespian Officers, I'm going to refer to it as ITO, just because it's a little less of a mouthful.
Yeah.
So the ITO position now is a little different than it was before, just because of COVID and there's been a lot of administration changes. But basically, there's this thing called the International Thespian Society, which is the honors, basically like an honor society for theater students. And they have a parent company called the Educational Theater Association. And that's like the business aspect that like kind of funds everything and supports the teachers. So the ITO serve basically as the student voice of the thespians to the adults, to the Educational Theater Association. And what we do, at least what we did my year and most of the years leading up to it, is we traveled to different state thespian chapters around the country to their different festivals. And we taught leadership workshops and advocacy workshops to high school theater students around the country. And we made connections and we promoted different fundraisers like Broadway Cares, Equity Fights AIDS, and send a troop to the International Thespian Festival. We also got to travel to DC to do some advocacy, as well as a lot of us did some individual advocacy within our own states and our own chapters for arts education and theater education around the country, just wherever we could. So that's kind of like what we did. And then you want a little like about my experience?
Yeah,
or...
so you mentioned a little bit about like the advocacy and the leadership workshops. And since look, this is for like a leadership type of group, if you could talk about the leadership that you did in that position, or if you want to talk about the advocacy programs you worked for in more detail.
Yeah, totally. So about a month after we got elected, we traveled to Washington, D.C. It was the July before my senior year. And that was a week of leadership summit. So we got trained on all our leadership. We created our advocacy and leadership workshops. And we got to go to the Capitol building, and we got to talk to all of our Congress people, our congresspersons. And basically, I think like we were talking, there were a couple main points that we were talking about. Some of it was about like wavelengths for microphones and like airspace, like things like that. Some of it was for funding for arts education, because we don't get as much funding as maybe some other departments and some other activities in schools. So that was really cool. And at Leadership Summit is where we vote for our chairperson. So the ITO chair position is the position that I served in. So my board, there's 6 ITO each year. My board chose me as the chair. And so a lot of what I did, I think a lot of times, maybe not so much now, but a lot of times growing up, like, I know I definitely thought that the leader was the person that was like talking a lot and kind of giving the orders and had all the ideas. And it was very much not like that with my board. A lot of what I did and a lot of how I led was through listening and I took so many notes because
Awesome.
this board, it's created with these students who have all these ideas and these big voices and personalities, especially because they're theater students. And so they all have all these things that they want to get out. And so what I found was that my role on this board was really to listen and to see where these ideas intersected and to find where each person's strengths were, so that I could say, hey, you're really great at this. What if you and you worked together on the International Thespian Student Leadership Council, which we started my senior year. And so, I mean, that was what I did. So I had ideas going in, but I found that what my team needed, and it's different every year, but what my team needed was someone to kind of be the mediator and kind of be the quiet person to sit back and listen to find how everything would work out. My year also had, there was a little bit of trauma because our advisors, our adult advisors that we started the year with resigned a couple months in. So there was a lot of leadership change and faculty change within the Educational Theater Association. So along with the kind of organizational tasks that I had to do as chair, I also had to do a little bit of like motivation and kind of keeping the team together.
For sure.
Yeah. So a lot of my job too became like morale, and like I sent some letters, like some like handwritten letters to like boost how we were feeling at the beginning of the year. And then also when COVID hit. So that was kind of my role as the chair. And then we all went on our individual trips. So the workshops that we taught, I don't know if you want to hear about that or not. Huh?
That'd be awesome if you want to.
Okay. Yeah. So we each taught our own individual workshops. And so they were not like your ordinary, like we go in and we put up a PowerPoint and we talk you through how to be a good leader, right? It was more like improv games. And mine was very like physical. Like we played games where we had blindfolds on and you had to guide a person across the obstacles in the room. And so mine was a lot of like talking about trust and communication and kind of the listening skills. Whereas I had team members, board members who went out, and theirs were a little more how to like brand your ideas and how to kind of get them out there and express them well. So each ITO had their own kind of personal flair that they put on their workshops. And then we all had our own advocacy workshop that, oh gosh, it was 2 years ago. So I'm trying to remember exactly what it was called. It was waitress themed. So Waitress, I don't know if you're familiar with it, is a Broadway musical. And it's all about like baking pies and like family and things like that, and like coming into your own. And so ours was like advocacy pie. And so it was very themed theater wise, but it was teaching students how to give an elevator speech if you have 30 seconds to talk to a congressperson. It was teaching students how to use the facts and the numbers that that our public service leaders like to have when they're making decisions, and how to present yourself well. Just pretty simple things, but then giving them the opportunity to put those lessons into action within the workshop, and giving them materials and templates to send to leaders so that they really feel like they are prepared to go out and advocate for what they're passionate about, whether it's theater and arts education in high school or something else as they graduate and move on. So we try to make it entertaining because sometimes the stuff can get a little boring, but we also tried to make it practical. Right. And so that was really cool. It was really cool to be a part of.
Yeah, no, that sounds awesome. Everything you've talked about, you got to do a lot. And I think it sounds like you really helped some people with their leadership. So that's super great. Okay. So now that you've been at KU for almost a year and a half, pretty close. So how has it been being on the dance team been? Just tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So it was, I mean, I had no expectations going in last year because we barely did anything. But one of the things that I was told pretty early on, like maybe a month after I made the team, was that freshmen don't lead, that freshman year is all about learning. And that, I mean, that's always, I think for most people switching from high school to college, like you're like, oh my gosh, I went from being like top senior, like working and leading and really knowing what I'm doing, to having no idea what's going on, deer in the headlights. But hearing that freshmen don't lead, I was like, okay, that's interesting. But I did love that they said freshman year is about learning. And I think that I would amend that to say every year is about learning, no matter where you're at as a leader, like, and as a student, you should always be taking things in, you should always be learning. But what I learned last year is that even though we didn't do a lot, and even though I wasn't like in a leadership position, there's still ways to lead outside of that. I mean, I think we all know this, like leading by example. I'm a big fan of service leadership. So like last year we cleaned out, our Spirit Squad coordinator needed help cleaning out our uniform and gear, like attire closet. And I was one of the first people to volunteer. I was like, sign me up. Like, how can I get involved? I just want to do something. And even little things like putting the speaker away after practice, picking up our palm strands. So even though I wasn't teaching dances or leading warm-ups or anything like that, I still feel like I had the opportunity to show that I care about this team and I'm willing to do what's best for them. So it was really fun last year. We didn't get to do a lot, but it was great to be a part of something in a year that there wasn't a lot going on.
Yeah.
This year I am a conditioning chair. So I lead warm-ups, conditioning, stretches before practice. And then we have this thing called Late Night in the Fog, which kicks off basketball season. So I helped choreograph one of the dances for that. And I got to teach that to the group and set formations. So that was really cool. And I get to set and choreograph another dance for basketball season. So a little bit more like stepping into my own there. Another thing, so I think I said this earlier, I view leadership through a servant leadership lens. So I can't emphasize that enough. I do what I do to help out. And sometimes I don't get to do very cool things because I volunteer to do stuff, but I think that it all works out and it all comes around in the end. So Late Night in the Fog fell on a weekend that we had an away travel game. And we had 2 seniors on that away travel game who wanted to be at late night. So I volunteered to switch with them so that they could do their last late night because they really wanted to do that. And so while I lost that opportunity, that would have been really cool, I still got to travel with some of the rookies and the freshmen. And so I view, I think that's maybe a form of leadership, sometimes you take one for the team and you may not get to do something cool, but you get something else in return. And it's not always like that, but it's still fun. So I'm still learning. I'm still like figuring out how to fit.
Yeah.
It's fun. I like it.
That's awesome. So this year it seems like you've gone into some like more official leadership roles. So other than like servant leadership, what other like leadership skills have you used to be successful? Like good communication, like more motivational skills. What have you been doing to get everyone ready and before practice, things like that?
Yeah, definitely. I would say communication. I actually have had a lot of communication like with our coaches. And then communication with, I think when you come in as a rookie, you're like, I have no idea what's going on. I don't know what to do. And so being a person that they can turn to ask questions about, okay, when are we supposed to be there? What are we doing? How does the order of this go? That's definitely been something that I've done. And also like before practices, sometimes, we're frequently there pretty early. And so, I like to be there to go over dances when people need it or when I need it. So that kind of thing, just like knowing, being prepared, following along and knowing what to expect and then coming prepared for that so that if other people don't know what's going on, I do so that I can help out there. Yeah. And then like game day, we've got, there's a lot of like timing things that we have to do. And sometimes we move a little slow. Like we finish first quarter and we need to get to second quarter super quick, but sometimes we linger a little bit. And so I try to be one of the first ones to be like, all right, let's go, let's head over because second quarter is about to start. So little things like that. It's a different kind of leadership than I'm used to, like with ITO, where it's like scheduling meetings and creating workshops. But it's still, it's very interesting and fun to learn a different side of things like that.
Well, it's great that you're able to thrive in both of those situations. That's awesome. So those are most of my like leadership questions. Was there any advice you want to give to any other college students, any freshmen? You talked about freshmen a lot. Any advice you want to give them? It can be about anything.
Yeah. So I guess I would just say, like, if you're like me, so sometimes when I go into new environments, I'm a little quieter, I'm a little more shy, despite being a theater kid at heart. Like, I get nervous because I don't want to do anything wrong or upset anybody. But I will say, if you're one of those people and you notice that something is wrong or something is amiss, and you don't know if you should say something or stay quiet, because to say something, you're worried, like, oh my gosh, I don't want other people to think that like I'm stepping out of bounds or something. And to stay quiet is a little less stressful, a little less confrontational. I would recommend that you say something, because I mean, 9.5 times out of 10, I would say every time that I've done that, it's paid off. Like, it's been right. So trust your gut. Don't be afraid to speak up. Don't be afraid to say something and to stand up for what's right, no matter what. Even if you're shy, it's worth it. And you will feel better in the end. You won't regret saying something, but you might regret not saying something, if that makes sense.
No, for sure. That's amazing advice.
So
Well,
that's
thank
it.
you. Yeah. Is there anything else you'd like to add? If not, that's all I have.
No, thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. It's so good to talk to you.